Brad, did the Browns make the right move getting Kareem Hunt?
I think it was worth the risk. I mean, obviously you have to measure it out, but here, let me just say this. Like, when I was playing for the Bulls, there was a baseball scout that was the general manager, Jerry Krause. He was just a guy that was a talent guy. I don't care what sports you played, he just knew how to find talent. And when you're on a championship, trying to put together a championship team, you have to make some decisions sometimes for the betterment of the organization. Sometimes some of them are going to be risky, not all of them are going to be clean. Now, here's a chance to pick up a player, if you can keep him on the right track, could be very productive for this team, right? I don't think anyone here could deny that. But there's some risk in it, right?
Yep.
So do you play it safe and stay where we are? Or do you try to push the envelope and see if because if it doesn't work out, you can always change course. You can.
Aaron, good move, bad move?
It's the one thing I'll criticize Dorsey for. I didn't like the timing of it. I think they could have waited for the NFL to issue the suspension, waited to know more information. I don't know why they had to rush into this decision. And then I also think this shouldn't be a factor, but it is, right? I mean, Kareem Hunt happens to play the most replaceable position in sports. C.J. Anderson was on the street, and then he was rushing for 150 yards in a playoff game a couple of weeks later. So I think if you ever had an injury at running back, you could find someone who could step in and replace him. I think he's a talented player, but I just didn't understand the timing and the why behind the Browns doing this now.
Andy, good move, bad move?
I think it's a good move. I think it's low risk. If it doesn't work out, they have nothing to lose. I wonder what they're going to do with Duke Johnson, which has pretty much been the big storyline for the last 24 hours. I also question the timing of it, but I think if you look at it from a PR standpoint, you're trying to figure out what the news cycle will be. You know that when you sign him, there's going to be a lot of hoopla about it. You're going to take a lot of heat for it. So they've taken the brunt of the heat now in the offseason. You know, it's gonna percolate again a little bit once we find out what the suspension is. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, though, once they hit the suspension. It'll be a big deal when he returns back to the field. But I think if you look at the news cycle and the way that stories live for 24, 48 hours, I think it's easier to eat it in January than it is in the middle of camp. So, or in the middle of camp, or even during the season when it starts. So I think it's very low risk. All the pressure's on Kareem. If it doesn't work out, we've already lived this with Josh Gordon, so I think we've already had a taste of what it is. And, you know, if he can play the way he did in Kansas City, it's more reason to believe that he'll be as you know, that this team can make the playoffs and what they can do from there. So I think he's a great running back. He just needs to get his head on straight.
Adam the Bull, good move, bad news?
Well, I mean, from a pure football standpoint, obviously it's a good move, but I didn't like it. I didn't think it was a good idea. Even from a football standpoint, you have Nick Chubb, who I think could be one of the, you know, an elite back. I think he was already showing that the second half of last year. I don't think you need two elite backs. Obviously, it's a nice thing to have if you can have it, but I don't think it's a necessity, unlike other positions where it's good to have elite play, you know, more than one elite player. I think it's very disappointing. I think it sends a bad message, especially to women in the community. But I think it's really a league problem. I don't think he should be eligible to be signed. I think we're so quick. People are so quick to say he deserves a second chance. I don't think anybody deserves a second chance. I think you earn a second chance. I think you earn a second chance with your actions. I think guys should have to prove they're truly remorseful, because when a man puts his hands on a woman, and they say they, you know, apologize or they're remorseful in a press conference, my belief is I don't believe them in most cases until it's proven. So I would have liked to see Kareem Hunt or any other guy that's arrested or in trouble for this take real steps, work with women's shelters, women's groups, really do things that prove that they want to change as a human being. I do think people can change, and I think people can earn a second chance. I don't think he has. I think the Browns have handled it very poorly. I love John Dorsey, but I thought he handled that initial press conference poorly.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrible job that Kareem Hunt hasn't spoken yet. He should have talked to the Cleveland media already. That's a huge problem I have with that. They keep saying he's remorseful. How do we know that's true? So, listen, eventually we're going to just talk about football. And from a football perspective, obviously, you know, I just said I want to get Odell Beckham. You want to get as many weapons as possible, and he is a great player. But, you know, Andy says we lived through Josh Gordon. Yeah, and part of the problem was you can never trust that Josh was going to stay on the field, and that worked as a real negative for the team. And, you know, the Browns are now developing a reputation, like it or not, as, you know, it used to be, oh, the Bengals have all these criminals. Well, now every time there's a player with questionable character, people are connecting them to the Browns in terms of the draft and stuff like that. And, you know, with all the good feelings about the team, that doesn't make you feel good, I think.